I guess maybe just to start things off, tell us what you're seeing on the ground there as it pertains to demand for the semiconductor space.
Yeah, I mean, since October, we're seeing about a 12 to 15% increase in terms of demand. And that's significant, clearly a good barometer going into NVIDIA next week. But I think it just shows these enterprise use cases are exploding. And that is really accelerating demand because no one wants to sort of lose their spot in line. And I think that's just more and more bullish for the AI revolution, the second, third, fourth derivatives. I mean, that's so far from our trip, very, very bullish and feeling really good going into NVIDIA next week.
Is NVIDIA still a top pick for you? Everything you're seeing there just reinforcing what you like?
I think it's a table pounder. I think it's going to be a $4 trillion and eventually $5 trillion market cap because there's only one red phone to call for these chips. It's the godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA. And what I'd also tell you, and we talk about in the note, from a DeepSeek perspective, 45, 50 enterprises, not one has changed plans post DeepSeek. I think it just shows this CapEx doubling down. That's what we're seeing across, not just big tech, but across enterprise.
Dan, there were some takes last week on this AI summit in Europe where some of the survey work being done had some constituents saying, yeah, we're curious, but we're not seeing outright value on these investments quite yet. Where do you think AI, how much of IT budgets does it make up, and how much could it get to?
Yeah. I mean, Carl, I think that's why you look at names like Palantir, right? Kind of sort of the golden child in terms of use cases, monetization, as it's already playing out. We believe everything we're seeing, it's about 10% IT budgets, and in some cases, 15%. Now, look, there are some enterprise and, of course, places around the world that are not going down the AI path, of course. But they're going to have to delay their initiatives for, I'd say, 12, 18 months, because right now, demand's outstripping supply 15 to 1. And that's why I sit here and I think tech stocks are going to be up another 25% this year, despite tariffs, despite nervousness, worries about stretch valuation. I think Street is massively underestimating what demand looks like in this AI revolution, second, third, fourth derivatives.
And so if demand is going to be that strong, and you just mentioned tariffs, I mean, do you think tariffs are somewhat of a non-issue, meaning you're just going to pay what you have to pay because you need these chips to do what you've planned to do?
Yeah, and Courtney, you're talking about with Elon before. I mean, I think this is all a poker game, right? And I think, it's very easy to get nervous in terms of first shots across the bow. I don't believe it's going to massively impact the chip and overall AI revolution. I think there's also going to be some, I think some gaps in terms of whether it's Apple, Tesla, potentially, some opportunities that they could ultimately not really even be impacted by some of the tariffs as this all plays out. But what we're seeing here in Asia, less nervousness about tariffs than maybe even 6 weeks ago. And that's bullish when you look at this relative to overall demand and what's going to really be a game of high-stakes poker between DC and Beijing.
Finally, Dan, you mentioned Apple. We're on the lookout for this newest member of the family announcement. Any clarity in your mind what we should expect?
Yeah, look, I think it's another product that's going to just fuel more and more of what I believe is just a broader, not just upgrade cycle, but Apple is going to continue to see this renaissance of growth. I think when you sort of look at the price point from an SE perspective, especially emerging markets, especially developing markets, I think India more and more is going to become a bigger market. This just shows Cupertino is not just going to play on the high end. They're going to focus on middle market. They're going to focus on rolling out Apple Intelligence. We think to China really soon with Alibaba as a partner. And that's why, look, haters will hate in Apple, but the first one to hit $4 trillion will be Apple, in our opinion, followed by NVIDIA.
Viewers want to know, Dan, if your jackets are as popular on that side of the planet as they are on this side.
They are. I mean, they are. I could tell you across Asia, I think really, really bullish on the colors. And, it's nice to see that on both sides.
I know you might be a Penn State fan, but that looks a little OSU Scarlet to me. Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
I give credit where credit's due. Congrats.
Thank you. OH.
Dan Ives recently came out to reveal how all the big tech companies have gathered up to deliver the best news possible for Nvidia before February 26th, when it reveals its fourth quarter and fiscal earnings. Nvidia has been struggling less than what people have expected for it, even after the DeepSeek debacle. but getting assurances from the biggest clients of its strong AI GPU will put any Nvidia holder at ease, at least for the time being. What have they done? How is this affecting Nvidia? Only one way to find out. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy.
Nvidia, you sort of alluded to it, that company's going to report mid-next week. There's always a lot riding on it, as we know. Given what happened with the DeepSeek sell-off, and even though Jensen Huang, the CEO, commented on it, albeit briefly, in the last 24 hours or so, this is really going to be our first look under the hood of what they're actually thinking about demand. We know what the hyperscalers are spending, but we're going to get a better look on where the environment currently is.
Yeah, Scott, you said it. DeepSeek changed the game for Nvidia and for Nvidia shareholders. And I think that it might have actually done them a little bit of a favor in the sense that it gave them some cloud cover, right? So Jensen had been making comments about the rollout of Blackwell or the shift to Blackwell not exactly going as planned in previous quarters. And I think that maybe there's some of that sentiment, you know, that gets a chance to get out there now under the cover of the DeepSeek news. And more than anything, it at least took away the conversation or the concern that investors had about aggressive valuation on that stock, right? We were talking about something like 40 times this year's earnings 2 quarters ago, and now the shares have sold off. They've recovered some since the DeepSeek announcement, but they haven't quite gotten back to where they were. And I think that might actually be a positive for Nvidia going into earnings next week instead of hurting it as badly as we probably thought it would 4 weeks ago.
Steph, what do you think?
Nvidia specifically, I think the expectations are still quite high, and the stock is up 100% in the past year, and everybody owns it, probably except me. But the expectations are high, and I don't know if they're going to raise numbers as aggressively as they did, and they have been doing over the past year. I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff. And you mentioned the hyperscalers. The hyperscalers aren't cutting back. They're increasing the numbers, right?
Up.
So that does help them. I just think the expectations are really high. So I think, wouldn't be surprised as the options market is pricing an 8% move either way. I don't think that's a really big deal, considering how much the stock has actually run up. But I would wait, in terms of buying other semiconductors, I would wait until they report.
The chatter among Nvidia's Magnificent Seven peers is far from quiet. Armed with hefty capital expenditure plans, tech behemoths are jockeying for AI supremacy. Microsoft stole the spotlight by earmarking a colossal $80 billion for data centers and AI infrastructure. Not to be outdone, Meta Platforms signaled potential capital expenditures surging up to $65 billion this year. Furthermore, the tandem of Alphabet and Amazon is purportedly setting its sights on a combined spend of an eye-popping $180 billion on AI this year alone. But before going on with the video, are you into cryptocurrency? If so, check out our second channel, Investocracy Crypto. We bring you breaking news, expert analysis, and the latest trends in the fast-moving world of digital assets. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor or just curious about the future of finance, we've got something for you. Click the link in the description to subscribe to Investocracy Crypto now. Don't miss out and stay ahead of the game. Now, let's get back to the video.
Names like Nvidia keeping weekly losses to a minimum around 2.5% ahead of earnings Wednesday. Investors will be looking to CEO Jensen Huang for commentary on the supply of its latest chip, the impact of tariffs, and of course any fallout from last month's DeepSeek news. Hard to believe it was a month ago, Scott.
Yeah, I know it. Perfect setup for us. Seema, thanks so much. Seema Modi. Staying with Nvidia now, earnings obviously front and center next week. The latest checkup on the strength of the AI trade. For more on what to expect and what the current landscape actually looks like right now, let's bring in First Smart Capital founder and partner Rick Heisman. Welcome back.
Hey,
it's good to see you. So let's just think about Nvidia for a minute. I mean, in general, what do you think is on the line next week for the AI trade?
Well, it's really, are people continuing to spend on CapEx? And we're seeing not only the hyperscalers, but also companies in the private market continuing to bet big on the long term on AI and therefore continue to buy chips from NVIDIA.
So we heard within the last 24 hours from Jensen Huang, CEO, who addressed the fallout from DeepSeek, suggesting that the market got it wrong, that all it shows you is that you're going to need way more compute, not less. Some of the other hyperscaler CEOs spoke of, similar needs following that really big upset that we witnessed in the market, and I'm sure you watched it as closely as everybody else. Is that how you see it too?
I don't see it exactly the same way.
Where's the nuance then?
I see that there are going to be open source and closed source data sets. and they're going to need different amounts of compute to be able to work together. But all the big models are going to need a massive amount of compute. So maybe the hyperscalers will have some closed models, even OpenAI having closed models. But some of the open source models will be used by more of the startup ecosystem and people who need to be more capital efficient.
When pondering whether Nvidia stock is ripe for acquisition before February 26th, the wisdom of long-term investment strategies looms large. Historically, pinpointing exact buy dates pales in comparison to solidifying a resilient investment conviction. By adopting a methodical approach akin to dollar-cost averaging, Nvidia stock seems poised for an opportunity-steeped revival after surviving the DeepSeek commotion. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Did you come away from that story thinking that it was less bullish for an Nvidia, or at least even to some incremental degree? Did you come away thinking that?
A little bit, but not really, because what you're seeing is that there's still this fundamental demand from AI. The important thing is DeepSeek immediately rocketed to #1 on the App Store, which means there's still fundamental consumer demand for whatever AI products out there. And as much as you could track, fundamental demand equals demand for NVIDIA chips, and therefore that demand will remain for the near term.
You mentioned the amount of money that the hyperscalers are spending. I mean, it's extraordinary, right? How long does the market accept that?
They have to accept it for the rest of 25, both on an offensive and defensive perspective. No one's going to announce on their earnings, oh, we're going to spend less because we believe less in AI. That's not going to be a 25 story. It's, hey, we have to be offensive and defensive. We're at least halfway across this lake. We're beginning to see with things like Agentforce, the AI is working, it's driving ROI, and we need to continue to double down on this hand.
At present, Nvidia stands at a critical juncture brimming with opportunities. If forecasts dwindle into reality, where tech titans channel immense capital into data center proliferation, Nvidia's architectural mastery might savor its much-desired resurgence. But what do you think? Share your thoughts. Finally, if you would like to know what companies like Nvidia have been up to these past few days, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.